Welcome to Keystone University. This video provides a summary of our Atlantis Ireland theory. That ancient Ireland, that island in the Atlantic Ocean, is the legendary lost island of Atlantis. This video is a summary of a 3-hour presentation we have also made available, which contains over 1,000 facts and pieces of evidence proving our theory beyond all reasonable doubt. Also in this video, we will deal with the top 10 objections to the theory that Ireland is the legendary lost island. First and foremost, what was Atlantis? Well, when you strip back the legends, Atlantis was an island of advanced seafaring Stone Age people who lived in the Atlantic Ocean. They were an ancient mother culture who predated the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Persians, and other ancient civilizations. And the island of Atlantis suffered a great catastrophe around 11,600 years ago, right at the end of the Younger Dryas or Mini Ice Age period. Here we can clearly see Britain, Atlantis, Ireland, the Isle of Man, France, Spain, here's Iberia, Africa, here we've got the Atlas Mountains, the city of Cairn, we've got Ethiopia, and obviously the Atlantis or the Atlantic Ocean. There's 3 rules of the game to learn from Keystone. Number 1, don't believe a word we say. Do your own research and do your own thinking. The point of an education is to help you think for yourself, not to tell you what to think. Every single fact and piece of evidence we include in this video or our other presentation can easily be verified on Google. Number 2, before you make up your mind, open it. Our theories are cutting edge. They go against the mainstream opinion. Therefore, please approach our work with an open mind and do your own thinking. And finally, wait for the mainstream to catch up. If you want stale academic opinion, you've come to the wrong place. If, however, you want to be ahead of the mainstream, keep watching. Our mission is to build the world's best university, a centre of excellence to push the human race forward. And we give you this presentation for free to help expand your mind. So let's get down to work. So these are the top 10 objections we have received to our Atlantis Ireland theory. We have received these objections from academics, scientists, and members of the public. So let's deal with them all. So the top 10 objections. Number 1, Atlantis is a myth. It never actually existed. It's a fable. Plato made the whole thing up. Another objection is that Ireland was under ice sheets until around 10,000 years ago and couldn't possibly have been Atlantis. Another objection is that there is no evidence for humans in Ireland before 10,000 years ago, that Atlantis sank to the bottom of the ocean while Ireland didn't, that the early Irish were very primitive and didn't even have boats. Another objection is there's no DNA evidence to support your Atlantis Ireland theory. Yet another objection is the Eye of the Sahara in Mauritania, Africa is Atlantis, not Ireland. Or that the Irish are Indo-European descendants, not an ancient people. Another objection is that there is no evidence for a comet impact that caused a large tsunami that drowned Atlantis, Ireland. And finally, that we are not a real university. So they are the top 10 objections, so let's deal with each and every one of those. If you want more information on our theory, we have a much longer video which goes into a lot more detail. This video is a great summary. So the number 1 objection from academics and scientists and members of the public is that Atlantis is a myth. It never really existed. The legend of Atlantis was told by the Greek philosopher Plato, and the legend itself originated in ancient Egypt. So let's go right to the source and examine what the Egyptians themselves have to say. According to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is a collection of Egyptian scrolls from around 4000 BC, King Thoth, the founder of the Egyptian civilization, was born in a distant land in the western Atlantic Ocean. This island was called the Sunset Land in the Western Ocean, or the Land of the Setting Sun. The king list found on the Turin Papyrus from 1300 BC lists the 10 kings whose reigns over a foreign country ended 9850 BC. Separately, the Palmero stone, dated around 2500 BC, lists 8 of the 10 god kings who ruled a foreign land. According to an Egyptian tablet, Pharaoh King Menes sailed to the Sunset Land where he was stung by a bee and died. He is buried in this sunset land, not Egypt. When his Egyptian tomb was opened, it was found to be empty. His remains lay in Knockmany, County Tyrone, Ireland. Greek historian Diodorus told us that the Egyptians were strangers who in remote times settled on the banks of the Nile, bringing with them the civilization of their mother country, the art of writing and a polished language. They had come from the direction of the setting sun, the far west, and were the most ancient of men. Over 100 years before Plato, Greek historian Herodotus, in and around 450 BC, wrote about the Atlantis Sea, and he described a settlement of Atlanteans living in North Africa, near the Atlas Mountains. Scotia, a daughter of an Egyptian pharaoh, is buried in Tralee, County Kerry, in what's known as the Vale of the Little Flower, while an Egyptian bead necklace was found on a 3,800-year-old skeleton at the Hill of Tara in County Meath. The ancient Irish called Egypt Area, which is another form of Éireann, Ireland's ancient name. Thousands of red and fair-haired mummies have been found in Egypt, and hundreds have been found all around the world. Several Egyptian pharaohs were red or fair-haired, including the great Ramesses II. Wherever we find redheads, we find descendants of the ancient Irish. If we take a look at these two images, the top one is of Ramesses. That's his body. You can clearly see that he's got red hair. And it has been proven now beyond a shadow of a doubt that the embalming process does not change the colour of someone's hair. His hair was red because he had red hair. It was nothing to do with the embalming process. The bottom image is of Tutankhamun's sarcophagus. Tutankhamun's genetic profile is found in the highest concentration in Ireland today. In response to the claim that Atlantis is a myth is completely made up, we have clear evidence here from a number of sources that the ancient Egyptians, where the legend of Atlantis originated, they spoke about an island in the Western Ocean, and that they left that island because it was flooded. There are many references in ancient mythology and writings to a sacred island of the setting sun in the Western Ocean. There are also records of other pharaohs trying to find their ancestral homeland but failing. However, Pharaoh King Menes did find it, and he died and was buried there. If you think that Plato made up the legend of Atlantis, fine. But that doesn't mean the Egyptians made up the legend of the island in the Western Ocean. Their homeland. Their ancestral homeland. In summary, in response to the objection that Atlantis is a myth, Plato made it all up, it doesn't really matter whether Plato made it up or not. There are lots of records in Egyptian mythology of a sacred island in the Atlantic Ocean. And the legend of Atlantis originated in Egypt and obviously got muddled and mutilated along the way. So the next objection we've received to our theory is that Ireland was not completely covered by ice sheets during the latter part of the Great Ice Age, if it was ever fully covered at all. There's no doubt that Ireland was affected by the Ice Age and that there was ice sheets covered a large part of the island, but recent evidence is pretty convincing that Ireland was never fully covered. This graphic on the right illustrates the maximum coverage of Ireland during the Ice Age, a worst case scenario if you like, and it opens up the possibility that Ireland was habitable for at least 100,000 years, if not for the entire duration of the Ice Age, which is over 1 million years. Now this is big because up until quite recently it was claimed that Ireland was fully under ice during the Ice Age up until around 10,000 years ago, and a lot of academic opinion was based on that assumption, which has turned out not to be true. In more recent developments, the Atlantic Gulf Stream has come into play. Because the island is heated all year round by the warm influence of the Atlantic Gulf Stream, Ireland is much warmer than other countries that share its same latitude. Put simply, the Gulf Stream ensures that the Irish coastline remains ice-free throughout the winter. It keeps Ireland's temperature temperate. Ireland does not get extremes of heat or cold, it's a temperate climate. New research from Norway now proves that the Gulf Stream did not stop during the Ice Age, as was previously thought. This opens up the strong possibility that the Irish Ice Age was much milder than previously thought, which would explain the lack of drumlins across the centre of Ireland, among several other things. The Gulf Stream is why Ireland has the most temperate climate on Earth. Ireland avoids the extremes. Other places on the same latitude have much colder winters and hotter summers. Ireland avoids these extremes. It's a temperate climate, just like Plato's Atlantis. During the Younger Dryas mini-Ice Age period, Ireland's climate would have been similar to Iceland or Canada today. More extreme winters, but still very habitable. Recently, a 12,500-year-old bare bone was found in County Clare. This bone was cut by a human tool and proves that there were humans on Ireland during the Younger Dryas period, in what scientists call the Old Stone Age or the Paleolithic period. So far, 3 separate finds of flint tools have been found in Ireland that date back 2, 3, 400,000 years. One in Ballycullen in County Down, which is up here. One in Drogheda, County Louth, which is here, very close to the site of Newgrange. Drogheda is in the Boyne Valley region, the centre and capital of ancient Ireland. And one was found in the Aran Islands over here. The mainstream opinion that the ice sheets brought these human tools to Ireland is very questionable. This theory seems to have been formed when archaeologists thought that Ireland was completely frozen over up until about 10,000 years ago. So in summary, the objection to our theory that Ireland was completely covered by ice up until 10,000 years ago doesn't stand up to all the recent breakthroughs and research into that. At its worst, Ireland was mostly, but not entirely, covered with ice. This opens up the possibility that Ireland was habitable for much, much longer than people realise. It was habitable much longer than Britain, because Ireland gets the Atlantic Gulf Stream and Britain doesn't. And it was habitable for at least 100,000 years, if not much, much longer. So the third objection we received was that there is a lack of evidence for human occupation of Ireland prior to 10,000 years ago. So we'd firstly like to point out that a lack of evidence doesn't actually prove anything one way or the other. It's just a lack of evidence. But a much bigger point is that Ireland has not been heavily excavated. Even the Hill of Tara, Ireland's most sacred site, has not been fully excavated. Also, the extreme flooding at the end of the Younger Dryas period would have destroyed a lot of evidence. That being said, Ireland has an estimated 100,000 Stone Age constructions. By the time you add up all the ring forts, cairns, mounds, dolmens, standing stones, stone circles, etc., that's more than anywhere else on Earth. And that should serve as plenty of evidence for an advanced Stone Age civilization. So far, 3 separate finds of flint stone tools have been found in Ireland that date back 2 to 400,000 years. As we've just mentioned, the mainstream opinion is that the ice sheets, not humans, brought these tools to Ireland. This is a very questionable theory, and it's getting more and more shaky every day. For a start, if ice sheets did bring them, where exactly did they bring them from? Is it the seabeds around Ireland? If so, why would they not have walked the couple of kilometres from the seabed to the mainland? Or was it from Britain or some other countries? So the whole argument that ice sheets brought them is very, very questionable. It's very shaky. And it seems this theory only emerged because it was assumed at the time that Ireland was completely frozen over up until around 10,000 years ago, which has now been disproven. These were human tools, and it's a lot more logical that human tools were brought to Ireland by humans, not ice sheets. Waterford is on the southern coast of Ireland. There's Waterford here. And this part of Ireland is thought not to have frozen over during the Ice Age, or at least in the last 100,000 years. The caves around Waterford and the areas on the map that didn't freeze over would be a great place to start to find more old Stone Age or Paleolithic artefacts. The County Clare bare bone is the first such confirmed Irish find. More will surely follow. Thousands of artefacts recently found around the Waterford estuary indicate the region is one of the oldest settlements in Ireland. These artefacts, which include flint tools, were located in an area that was not under an ice sheet. Another Waterford site at Creedon Head near Dunmore East looks very promising, and artefacts already found at this site are more than 10,000 years old. Exact dates have not yet been provided. Expect a huge breakthrough from this region. So, this area of Waterford was not frozen over during the latter end of the Ice Age, if it was ever frozen at all. This is where we will find in Ireland lots of evidence of humans going back to much, much earlier than 10,000 years ago. Probably going back 2, 3, 4, 500,000 years. The sites that are being investigated down there at the moment, particularly Creedon Head, look extremely promising. It's an American university that's leading that archaeological dig, and they've already confirmed stone tools that are more than 10,000 years old. They just haven't confirmed how much older yet. We've heard a few things from the site that we can't really put into this video, but all we can say is expect huge breakthroughs from that region. The age of the first humans in Ireland keeps getting pushed back, just like it does all around the world. Recent research now proves that Stone Age humans sailed to Australia 65,000 years ago. Many had pale skin with red or fair hair. Soon evidence will emerge that humans have been in Ireland for hundreds of thousands of years. Time will tell. I would not like to be an archaeologist sticking by the theory that humans are only in Ireland 10,000 years. That's about to be washed away once and for all. So in summary to the objection of a lack of evidence for humans in Ireland more than 10,000 years, you've got 3 separate finds of flint tools. Okay, you could stick to the old argument that the ice sheets bought them, but that's on very, very shaky ground. You have got archaeological digs going on in Waterford at the moment with tools more than 10,000 years old, although the exact age hasn't yet been verified. And I think it's only a matter of time. In an island that hasn't been heavily excavated, it's only a matter of time until there's a significant breakthrough. We expect it within 12 months based on what we've heard. Okay, the next objection to our theory is that Atlantis sank to the bottom of the ocean. It drowned. Ireland didn't. This is one of the main reasons why the legend of Atlantis hasn't been taken seriously by science and academics. Because science is adamant that there is simply no room for a large sunken island, a large landmass to have sunk in the Atlantic Ocean. We are very open to the possibility that Atlantis was a large landmass, perhaps along the mid-Atlantic Ridge or in the Azores, that sank, and that the survivors came to Ireland rather than Ireland itself being Atlantis, but there is very little evidence for this, and the Atlantic seabed has been mapped, ruling it out. A large tsunami is a lot more practical theory for the drowning of Atlantis. We suspect that a comet struck the Puerto Rico Trench around 11,600 years ago, and this event caused tsunamis, earthquakes, epic rainfalls, and global flooding. So if we look at these two images, the top one is of a comet striking Earth. In mythology, that's called a red dragon or a fiery serpent. That's what the ancients called a comet. The bottom image is of a tsunami. You can imagine the damage a tsunami like that would do to a Stone Age civilization, let alone a modern civilization. Now, the date Plato provided for the drowning of Atlantis was 11,600 years ago. This date has also been independently found by scientists and geologists to have been the end of the Younger Dryas or the Mini Ice Age period, a time of extreme flooding and rising sea levels, which scientists call Meltwater Pulse 1b. Irish mythology also contains records of giant floods. So what's relevant here is, in Plato's legend of Atlantis, it was drowned 11,600 years ago. And now science is saying that 11,600 years ago, there was an extreme climate event. Something extreme which resulted in massive amounts of flooding in an event they call Meltwater Pulse 1b. If we return to the Egyptians, in Egyptian mythology, King Thoth and the founders of the Egyptian civilization arrived from an island in the Atlantic Ocean around 11,870 years ago. So very similar to the other date. This island was called the Island of the Setting Sun because it was on the very edge of the known world where the sun sets. Ireland today is often called the Land of the Setting Sun. Egyptian mythology tells us that this sunset island was the homeland of the ancient primeval ones, and it was drowned after a catastrophic flood. The Egyptians also called this land Irony, which is associated with Aaron, Ireland's ancient name. According to an Egyptian tablet, Pharaoh King Menes sailed to this sunset land in the western Atlantic Ocean, where he completed the inspection of this western land. He built a holing in Irony, where he was stung by a bee at the Lake of the Peak and died from anaphylactic shock. He is buried in this sunset land, not Egypt. When his Egyptian tomb was opened, it was found to be empty. His remains lay in Knockmany, County Tyrone. A stone at the site was inscribed Irony, the Egyptian name for Ireland. We think Ireland, an ancient island in the Atlantic Ocean that does exist, is a lot more viable a theory for Atlantis than an island in the Atlantic that doesn't. The next big objection to our theory is that the Stone Age Irish were very primitive and didn't even have boats, but that's not the case. Firstly, Stone Age people were a lot more intelligent and mobile than they have been given credit for. Recent evidence shows that 65,000 years ago, Stone Age people sailed to Australia on rafts. The earlier settlers of the island of New Zealand and Easter Island were said to have had red or fair hair. The descendants of the first settlers of New Zealand today are called the Waka Blondes. Returning to Ireland, Newgrange contains 97 huge curbstones. The heaviest weighs 10 tonne. Overall, around 200 stones weighing at least a tonne each were used in the construction of Newgrange, and all were transported to the site by boat. The stones used are greywacke, a rare type of stone found in Clogherhead, County Louth, and were shipped 30 kilometres to the site of Newgrange. Imagine the type of boat and brain power needed to load and unload a 10-tonne stone, let alone ship it 30 kilometres. People with that level of intelligence were more than capable of sailing great distances. If we look at these two images, the top one is of Newgrange and discoveries in the surrounding area. You will notice how dry the land is. This was taken during an extremely warm summer. Within 1 mile of Newgrange, all of these new structures has been found. And that's just on this side, let alone the other side. The bottom image is a reconstruction of a Stone Age boat. This is the type of boat the ancient Irish used. They weaved the body of the boat and then it was covered in dried and treated animal skin to make it waterproof. In our other video, we go into this in a lot more detail. That's the sort of boat that would move a 10-tonne stone. Now, what we're about to say very much goes against the mainstream, but that's just the nature of our work. The current mainstream opinion is that Newgrange is 5,200 years old. We are of the opinion that Newgrange is much older and is probably the oldest temple on earth, older than the pyramids, Göbekli Tepe, etc. Obviously, our opinion goes completely against the mainstream, and it also goes against the oldest carbon dating yet found at Newgrange. However, dozens of unexcavated sites are found at Newgrange, while the temple itself suffered lots of damage over the years which destroyed evidence. It's important to point out that Newgrange itself is made from stone which can't be carbon dated. So the only carbon dating you can take from it is organic material found at the site, which can be dated. And this is very unreliable. To use an analogy, a 12,500 year old bare bone, which was found in a cave in County Clare, doesn't mean the cave was 12,500 years old, just the bone. Ireland has an estimated 100,000 Stone Age constructions. Forts, mounds, stone circles, cairns, standing stones, ogham stones, etc. More than anywhere else on earth. And they had boats capable of transporting 10-tonne stones during the Stone Age. It's not much of a stretch to say that they could sail to Britain, Europe, and then the world. Another objection we received is that there's no genetic evidence, but that's just simply not the case. The stereotypical Irish genetics of red hair, blue eyes, and milky white skin is the rarest genetic combination on earth. Less than 1 million people. That's 0.0001% of the entire human population. Red hair, which ranges from strawberry blonde to fiery red to auburn, is thought to have first appeared 40,000 years ago, while blue eyes just 10,000 years ago. We would question both of those dates. We think it's a little longer than that, but that's the current mainstream opinion. Anywhere we find pockets of redheads, we find descendants of the ancient Irish. Unsurprisingly, Ireland has the highest concentration of red-haired genetics anywhere in the world. Our Celtic cousins in Wales and Scotland also have extremely high concentrations. The direct historical descendants of the ancient Irish include the Phoenicians, the Hebrews, the Berbers, and the Indo-European Aryans. The original meaning of the word Aryan was from Erin, Ireland's ancient name. Anywhere you see the word Phoenician, you can substitute the word Irish, and it starts to unlock the truth about ancient history. The language of the Irish, the Gaelic language, is remarkably similar to the language of the Phoenicians, the Hebrews, the Hindus, the Chaldeans, the Arabic language, and several others. As we learned earlier, Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II had reddish fair hair, and at least 6 other pharaohs are known to have red, fair, or auburn hair, while even the legendary Cleopatra is depicted as having red hair. Tutankhamun's genetic haplogroup, which is RM269, is found in the highest concentration in Ireland. The Irish are part of the same genetic haplogroup as the lineage of the pharaohs. Thousands of blonde and red-haired mummies have been found across Egypt. Red-haired mummies have also been found all over the world, including in New Zealand, China, Peru, and Alaska, the 4 corners of the world. There are numerous legends from all across the world of a highly advanced, bearded race of sunburnt redheads. There are also numerous legends of an early race of red-haired giants between 8 and 12 foot tall. Sometimes these are called the Cro-Magnons. Giantism is caused by the AIP gene, and the highest concentration in the world of this giant gene is found in Mid-Ulster, where 1 in 150 people carry this DNA. At one time in Ireland there was very tall people, hence all the legends of giants, and there was very small people, hence the legends of the little people. So to summarise this point, if you plug our theory into existing genetic research, you will find that it fits like a glove. Another objection we received quite a lot was that the Eye of the Sahara in Mauritania, Africa, is Atlantis, not Ireland. So the city of Atlantis that Plato described was actually an ancient Irish settlement in Mauritania called Cairn, sometimes spelt with a K. The word cairn is derived from the Old Irish word cairn, which means pile of rocks or stacked rocks. Cairn was located at the base of Mount Atlas in Mauritania, Africa, in a structure called the Ricard structure or the Eye of the Sahara. So basically what we're saying here is that the city of Atlantis, which is the bottom picture, that's an artist's impression, is the Eye of the Sahara, and the top picture is what remains of it. At one time that was a very fertile, lush environment with lots of water, and it would have had concentric rings of land and water. The Eye of the Sahara at one time was an ancient Irish settlement called Cairn, and Plato's legend combined 2 places into one. In Greek mythology, Atlas was the first king of 2 separate places, the island of Atlantis and Mauritania, Africa. So Plato's legend combined 2 separate places, a lot of exaggeration, and several errors. Greek historian Polybus placed the city of Cairn in Mauritania near Mount Atlas, while Greek historian Diodorus tells us that an Atlantean tribe lived at the base of Mount Atlas in Africa, and they were more advanced than surrounding tribes of the area. Cairn is also described in some Greek writings as being an island city, hence the confusion. Diodorus also tells us that it was actually Marina, the queen of the Amazons, who first attacked the Atlanteans in the city of Cairn before waging war in the region. And Greek history is very consistent on this point. It's very consistent in supporting the accounts of Diodorus, but not Plato, that it was the warlike Amazons and not the Atlantean Irish that attacked Greece and waged war in the region. By the way, there are also records that the Greeks kidnapped an Amazon princess called Antiope, and that the Amazons only attacked Athens in an attempt to rescue her. There have been several towns and islands called Cairn in ancient Greek writings. We also find reference to an island of Cairn, which is 12 days' sail from the Pillars of Heracles. This is a reference to the island of Atlantis, Ireland. And again we note the Greeks using the same word to describe two separate places. The island of Cairn and the city of Cairn, the island of Atlantis, the city of Atlantis. The remains of Barbary apes, which are only found in the nearby Atlas Mountains, have been found in Ireland in two separate locations, the hill of Tara, County Meath, and Owenmaka in Armagh. They were most likely gifts or pets brought back to Ireland. Now there is a tiny settlement of Barbary apes in Gibraltar, which is very close to the Atlas Mountains, but the Atlas Mountains is the only place you find Barbary apes. And we find the remains of two of them in Ireland, which were brought back as pets. So to answer the objection that the Eye of the Sahara is Atlantis, we agree on that one. This is the remains of the lost city of Atlantis, but not the lost island. That's one of the main reasons why the Eye of the Sahara theory has not been accepted, because it's incomplete. Atlantis was an island in the Atlantic. The Eye of the Sahara was a settlement. Another objection we've received to our theory is that the ancient Irish weren't a mother culture, they were actually descendants of the Indo-Europeans. So let's investigate this a little further. The Indo-Europeans, or Aryans, are a hypothetical people and language from around 4000 BC. What we know about these people is they had agriculture, domesticated animals, boats, songs, poetry, and their homeland had winter snow. They were also astronomers who honoured a sky god, the sun. The mainstream opinion is that the ancient Irish Gaelic language is just an offshoot of this hypothetical missing Indo-European language. So what linguists and scientists have done is they haven't found an answer, so they've made up a hypothetical theory to try and fill in the blanks. But we disagree with that. We are saying that the ancient Irish Gaelic is actually the missing mother tongue. And if you research it, you will find it's remarkably similar to Hindu, Hebrew, Arabic, Chaldean, and Phoenician. And the Phoenicians were Irish sea merchants and settlers. And as I mentioned earlier, when you're studying history, just replace the word Phoenician with Irish and it all starts making a lot more sense. Scholars have sought this missing language for centuries. And Irish Gaelic, an ancient language that does exist, is a lot more practical theory than a language that doesn't. One of the main reasons this hasn't been discovered until now is that very few people outside of Ireland speak Gaelic. Secondly, there are several different dialects of it. And thirdly, it's quite a confusing language. But put this theory to the test and you will see for yourself that the ancient Irish is the missing mother tongue. The original meaning of the term Aryan was from Erin, and Erin is Ireland's ancient name. In Hindu Sanskrit, Arya or Aryan means honourable or noble. Ireland's ancient advanced system of Brehon laws, the world's first laws, has only one comparison anywhere on earth in its complexity and its humanity: the Hindu Sanskrit. In the 19th century, several linguists considered Irish language to be even more ancient than the Hindu tongue. The word Om signifies mysterious or flow in the Hindu Sanskrit texts. Some think the Sanskrit word Om is derived from the Irish word Ogham. Ogham is the ancient Irish tree alphabet and is the oldest written language on earth. It's not only a Stone Age language, it's as old as the Stone Age itself. Now here's where the plot thickens. Ogham inscriptions were found in the ruins of the Garden of Semiramis near Baghdad, Iraq, which is thought to be the location of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which were built to remind the homesick queen of her native land. So I'll say that one again. Ogham inscriptions were found in the ruins of the Gardens of Babylon, which were built to remind the homesick queen of her native land. The Gardens of Babylon have never fully been declared at that site, but it's highly likely that's the site of them. Ogham was also discovered in Arabian manuscript found in Egypt and also in a cave in Colorado, USA. The Ogham language is a Stone Age language as old as the Stone Age itself. If we take a look at this image on the right, this was taken from an old book we found comparing ancient Irish to other languages. This is a translation of 4 different languages: Chaldean, Arabic, Egyptian hieroglyphics, and an Egyptian tree language. So what most people don't realise is the first written language in Egypt was not hieroglyphics, it was this tree language. And if you compare the tree language to the Irish tree language, Irish Ogham, they're almost identical. There are some variations, but very, very little. So this tree language is not actually Ogham, it's a descendant of Ogham. Ogham is the source. So here we've got the Egyptians using ancient Irish Ogham, and we're finding it in what's probably the lost gardens of Babylon. We're finding Ogham in Arabian manuscripts, and we're finding it in a cave in Colorado, USA. Ogham is the original written version of the Gaelic language. In our other video, we go into this in a lot of detail. The Brahmanda Purana, one of the oldest Sanskrit texts on earth, mentions the ancient history of Ireland and its sacred ground. This text describes Ireland as Swarnadweep, which means the Golden Island. And the word Swarna also signifies beautiful, most beautiful, and excellent. It has also been translated as the Happy Island. At one time, Ireland and Britain was known as the Blessed Islands or the Fortunate Islands. Ireland was known as the Sacred Island, Britain was known as the White Island. The White Island because of the white cliffs of Dover, and the Irish used to call it Goodbawn, which also meant White Island because of the white cliffs of Dover. The ancient Irish used to trade tin in Cornwall. In Hindu texts, we find that Ireland is described as a sacred island or a golden island, golden for the sun. The word Suvarnia is derived from Swarnadweep. From the earliest periods, the Hindus considered Suvarnia, Ireland, the abode of the Pitris, the fathers or Manu, the first men. So in summary, our response to the claim that the Irish are not an ancient culture, they're descended from the Indo-Europeans, our response is put that to the test. Study the Ogham, study the Irish language, get the best linguists in the world on it, and you will see that this theory is correct. So the next objection we got is that there's no evidence for a comet striking Earth which led to a tsunami and global devastation. So let's deal with that one. We're looking for a comet like this. We suspect that a comet struck the Puerto Rico Trench, which is right here, around 11,600 years ago, give or take a couple of hundred years. At that time, there was actually two comets, one up here in Greenland, about 1,400 years before it. That one melted a huge amount of ice and triggered the Younger Dryas mini ice age, or the cold snap. The second impact here, right at the edge of these tectonic plates, triggered an enormous tsunami, several earthquakes, volcanoes, epic rainfalls, etc. So, how do we know this? Gravitational anomalies often indicate large craters, and the Puerto Rico Trench, which is right here, has the most negative gravitational anomaly on Earth. According to NASA, there is a mass beneath this trench that is so dense, its gravitational pull causes the ocean to dip and it affects navigational instruments. This trench is located in the infamous Bermuda Triangle and contains the deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean, which is called the Milwaukee Depth. As this site is so close to tectonic plate boundaries, a comet impact here would trigger global earthquakes, volcanoes, and tsunamis. As the ocean boiled, huge quantities of steam would have reached the atmosphere, causing torrential rains which lasted for months. Volcanoes would have erupted all over the world, while the tectonic plates would have shaken, causing numerous earthquakes and tsunamis. a series of giant tsunamis would have affected the entire world, including Atlantis, Ireland. If a comet did indeed strike this region, the following events would be the origin of the Great Deluge legends, which are found all across the world in virtually every tradition. Now, this is a new theory, and we will have to wait for the science to catch up to prove or disprove it. This site was first proposed by a German rocket scientist, and there is a gravitational anomaly that causes the ocean to dip. A gravitational anomaly doesn't guarantee it was a comet strike, but it's a pretty good indication. Comets carry a lot of platinum, and it's highly charged and highly magnetized by the time it strikes Earth. In order to prove our theory of Atlantis, Ireland, we actually don't need a comet to prove that. If we actually look here, Ireland is close to the mid-Atlantic ridge, and here where 3 plates meet. Now, we actually don't need to prove there was a comet to prove our theory. We just are pretty sure that's what happened, because anything could have triggered a tsunami that drowned Ireland. Here we've got the mid-Atlantic ridge. Here we've got where 3 tectonic plates meet. Any sort of decent earthquake there would have created a big enough tsunami to drown Ireland. But we're pretty certain that a comet struck here, right where 2 plates meet, caused an enormous tsunami, and it lit up the world's tectonic plates. Something like this. This would have been a truly catastrophic event. Hell on earth. The amount of rainfall that would have been triggered by all the moisture going into the atmosphere would have lasted for months. There would have been earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. This was a mass extinction event. Ireland is here, pretty close to the tectonic plate, and where 3 meet. So any sort of big vibration there would send a tsunami over, and the comet struck around here. Finally, the last objection we received to our theory is that we're just a new university. Let's deal with that one. We are certainly not a traditional university, and we don't pretend to be. We are a new type of university with a huge vision, determined leadership, and a razor-sharp team who dare to go where others won't. Now, we work with academics and scientists all day, every day, and we have several of them on our team. But many of our academic friends have privately advised us not to publish our Atlantis, Ireland theory. They described publicly discussing Atlantis as kryptonite for an academic career. We think it's pretty sad to see how far many of the traditional universities have fallen from their original purpose of exploring the great mysteries. To put forward any theory on Atlantis is to put yourself up for some ridicule. That's to be expected. People can attack our findings, our organisation, or the very legend of Atlantis itself, but in the end, the facts prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Ireland is the legendary lost island of Atlantis, and that the city of Cairn, or the Eye of the Sahara in Mauritania in Africa, is the legendary lost city. We have conducted the largest ever investigation into Atlantis and have simply followed the evidence to offer the most logical, rational, and compelling theory ever produced for the location of the legendary lost island. This video is a brief summary of all our research. We have created a separate video with over 1,000 pieces of evidence to support our Atlantis Ireland theory. And we have made our work freely available for the public to view and make up their own mind. We don't ask anyone to believe a word we say. Think for yourself and do your own research. Anything contained in these videos can be found if you do enough research. We would like our Atlantis Ireland theory to be put to the test by the world's leading experts. We have a mountain of evidence that hasn't even made it into the video that we're more than happy to provide to a credible authority who would like to investigate our work. We also want to turn this work into a documentary or perhaps a TV series or film. Our mission is to build the world's best university, a centre of excellence that pushes the human race forward. We get up every day to revolutionise education. The current academic system is too slow, too expensive and too complicated. We have a completely different model to other universities. We don't offer 3-year programmes. We teach highly intense 3-day seminars. No prior qualifications are necessary to attend our seminars, which are taught by world-class teachers and special guests with incredible track records. That top image is typical of a room we would use for one of our seminars. The bottom image is our vision. We want to build a centre of excellence to push the human race forward. Our university is called Keystone for two reasons. Keystone is an ancient symbol for wisdom, and secondly, humans are a keystone species. We run 3 world-class seminars once a year in Dublin, Ireland. Every May we run our Atlantis seminar where we help you explore the great mysteries. Day 1 is all about the ancient history of Ireland and the world. Day 2 is all about modern science and how science is turning science fiction into science fact. We explore all the great breakthroughs and cutting-edge theories. Day 3 is all about human evolution, where we come from, why we're here, and where we're going. That programme is run every May in Dublin, Ireland, and tickets are available on our website keystone.ie. Our second programme is called Mastermind, where we help you awaken the genius within. Day 1 is all about the mechanics of the mind. We help you understand stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and how to balance your mind. Day 2 is all about creative thinking, how to unlock your inner genius, your inner wisdom. And Day 3 is all about creating an inspired mission for your life. The mind is like a computer and inspiration is like broadband. We run that programme every August in Dublin, Ireland. And finally, at our enterprise programme, we help you master the art of business. Day 1 is all about rapid growth, all about sales and marketing of any business. Day 2 is about financial mastery. How do you multiply the profits, cash flow and value of any company? And Day 3 is all about people skills. How to hire, manage and lead the best of the best. How to give feedback, management skills, coaching skills, all the people skills needed to achieve extraordinary things in business. That programme is run every November. The material we teach is exclusive to Keystone. It's not available anywhere else in the world or in any other organisation. All our seminars are run in Dublin, Ireland and are 3 days long. For tickets, visit keystone.ie and we hope to see you at one of our seminars soon. And if you do decide to come, why not stay a little longer and explore everything that Atlantis Ireland has to offer? Thank you so much for watching our video. Please share this with your network and check out our other video, which is a much more detailed exploration into Atlantis Ireland. Thank you.